This is a line-upon-line study of the hidden book, the two visions that Ellen White had where she talked about the Apocrapha. The first vision, as you can see up here, is about the vision that was on September 23, 1849. This was on a Sunday, actually, this vision. The second vision was on January 11, 1850. These two visions are related. This vision was on a Friday night, when you check the calendar. Then there's some interesting things that happened in these visions. One was that on January 26, 1850, they started referring to this second vision as being copied, and then some places stated it was some references said that the vision occurred here, but you trace it down, you research it out. Really, this was the original vision. At least there's several places that state that, and that have the entire document of what happened in that vision, what she saw. So it's really interesting how this happened. And then on January 28, 1850 was when the second vision was published. It usually was published with the date of January 26 or January 28. And once again, a couple of places say that it was on January 11. So that's another interesting thing about these visions. Around this time here, some of the visions published started to take out 3.5 paragraphs of the second vision. And then by the time of April 1, there were a lot more publishings that between then and 1851 that definitely took out 3.5 paragraphs of the first vision. So that's an interesting thing. There are 15 paragraphs in the first vision and the second vision. So let's look at what we find with line upon line here. Between the date of September 23 and January 11, there basically are 111 days. When you break it down, at least the way I broke it down in terms of math, the number 111 is one day out of the chiastic structure of 777. So that's really interesting to think about and study further. Then between the first vision and the copied vision on January 26, there are basically 126 days, which is, according to Daniel chapter 5, when you read about it, the 126 is the mene tekel upharsin, and it's connected with the 2520. So that's really interesting. 15 days between the actual first vision or second vision and the copied version of the second vision. This really amounts to 1 hour when you look at Revelation, where it talks about the 1 hour. Then between, of course, the copying date of the second vision, which was on a Saturday night, and the published vision, which was on a Monday. That makes sense when you think about actually publishing something. There were 2 days, and then there were 64 days between this published version versus another published version of vision number 2, which took 64 days. So together, between January 26 and April 1 were 66 days. That's a prophetic symbol to study out further. It's also interesting to me to notice that between January 11 of the second vision and April 1, which was when these versions were printed with minus 3.5 paragraphs of this vision, they rearranged a couple of things, but they basically kept the order of what was written. That there were 81 days, and I see this as possibly connecting to what happened at the SGA Bible Conference when Ellen White was 81. And this is interesting, that between January 11 and January 18 is 17 days. Ellen White was just a month shy of turning 17 when she had her first vision. So that's interesting. So this is just something that could be studied further. So I'm going to come down here and point out some of the important things about these visions. The first vision where she talks about the Apocrypha was in Topsham, Maine. She talks about the hidden book when she references the Apocrypha. She talks about, when in regards to the Apocrypha and regards to the Bible, she talks about binding it to the heart and the importance of that. This vision occurred at Brother Eli Curtis's home. There were 3 women who signed their names to a document. This is found in 16 MR. And they signed their names officially that they were there and witnessed it. If we had not had those women do that, it would be much more difficult for us to really track this vision, because this really wasn't printed or published for the public until 2014. The one paragraph where she talks about the Apocrypha, that was put in a couple of other documents as early as 1967, but still, it's really a good thing that these women did that. There's 22 miles distance between the home of James and Ellen White and Topsham, Maine. A lot of vision she had at Topsham, Maine. They connected a lot and had some fellowship together and prayer meetings and stuff like that. During this vision, Ellen White held the Bible at a 45-degree angle when she was in vision. Now that's interesting because a lot of people see that as connected possibly to Freemasons or Jesuits, or at least a reference as to what happened with hiding this book. So the second vision was in Oswego, New York. Once again, there are references to the hidden book. She says it was last Sabbath evening. When you look at the date here, if it really was this date, that would be referencing Friday evenings. That was the Sabbath. I've researched out how she talked about Friday evening Sabbath versus Saturday evening. It's a little difficult to track. You can't really say firmly that if she said it this way, it meant one day or the other. But anyway, this is just what I found here. One reference in here says that God's people did not realize the time, and that the dirt brush man had entered. That quote, that paragraph was taken and put in several other references and writings. So this was on the Sabbath. Second vision, question mark. It's been referred to as possibly the vision or the copying date for this vision. This is where people started to leave out 3.5 paragraphs of the vision. Paragraphs that were left out were paragraphs 9, 10, and 11 that were entirely left out. And they left out 2 sentences at the beginning and ending of paragraph 8. So it's really good to go back and read the real reference for this and compare notes with that. So once again, this was a Saturday evening, most likely after the Sabbath had ended. The publishing date, once again, would have been a Monday. On April 1, when these other versions came out, some of them were in Experience and Views, which later some of that got put into early writings. Some was in Review and Herald. That's a little harder to track for me doing a database search in the Ellen White website. The Present Truth periodical had it in there. I actually have a copy of that, and that's how I found out about that. So that's just important. Let's look at Ellen White's ministry here. Think about this ministry when you think about these dates here, line upon line. At the age of 1 month before 17, she had her first vision. So the month before would have been around October 22. Her ministry lasted 70 years. That's an interesting time period. At the age of 81, she was at the 1909 Bible Conference. There's 81 days there. This is her date of birth, her date of death. She died at the age of 87. So, you know, regardless of how anyone views this, you look at this history, you look at this, And in Psalms 139 and also in the book of Job, the Bible says that God numbers our days and He keeps record of them, even of our thoughts. Our thoughts are precious to Him, and He has us constantly in His thoughts. And when you think about any kind of numbering or looking at what happened here, if nothing else, you can see that God understands the end from the beginning in our lives. Whether in a time of light or darkness, God is there with us. And that's what it says in the book of Job and in Psalms 139. So once again, I come back up here just to show you this line upon line. If you want some further studies, in 2017, I did a study on the hidden book, The Two Visions of Ellen White. A lot of detail there. There's a couple of things I now would make corrections on. But those are studies worth studying. I'm going to repost a few things. But one thing that studying these visions and studying the book A Word to the Little Flock taught me is that we have evidence. If there's any book to study in the Apocrapha, it would be the book of 2nd Esdras. And that book talks about measuring the time, and that the wise in the last days should know and understand about measuring time. And so really by looking at that, that's what we're doing here. And studying these things should have the effect of increasing our faith in God and His Word. So having said that, I'll come back and post some more studies in a little while.